The Hall of Infinite Records was a monument to precision, a sprawling edifice of crystalline data vaults and humming neural servers that stretched beneath the triple-star glare of the Vextari homeworld. Its obsidian spires pierced the violet sky, their surfaces etched with the trillion-fold sigils of a civilization that had spent millennia perfecting the art of knowing everything. The air inside thrummed with the low, ceaseless vibration of quantum processors at work, a sound like the distant growl of some vast and patient beast. The scent of ionized coolant and polished chitin hung thick, undercut by the acrid tang of overclocked data relays. Chief Archivist Zyke-7 moved through the hall's central atrium on 6 articulated limbs, each step a measured click-click-click against the iridescent floor. His carapace, polished to a bureaucratic sheen, reflected the glow of floating holoscreens that displayed the galaxy's knowledge in neat, unassailable categories. As it should be. The atrium stretched above him in vaulted tiers, each level lined with flickering terminals where lesser archivists toiled, their mandibles working silently as they parsed the universe into digestible facts. "Finalize the human integration," Zyke-7 commanded, his vocal modulator flattening the words into an order, not a request. A cluster of junior archivists, smaller, duller-shelled Vextari, scurried to obey, their antennae twitching as they fed Earth's cultural database into the archive's taxonomy engines. The air shimmered with projected glyphs as the system ingested humanity's chaotic sprawl of history, art, and superstition, digesting it into something proper. "Chief Archivist," ventured Quill 3, the youngest of the juniors, her voice laced with the hesitant deference of one who had not yet learned when to stay silent. She clutched a data tablet in her forelimbs, its surface pulsing with erratic glyphs. Their mythology subfiles exhibit narrative structures inconsistent with verified historical. Zyke-7's foremost limbs snapped shut with a sound like shearing metal, silencing her mid-sentence. His compound eyes, cold and depthless, fixed on her. "Mythology is a primitive categorization error," he intoned, the subharmonics of his voice vibrating with disdain. "The humans lack the rigor to separate fact from fiction. Our systems will correct this." A hologram flickered to life between them, Earth's pantheons, its epics, its monsters rendered in crisp Vextari glyphs. The archives, AI, ever dutiful, had already begun its work. Odin, Zeus, and Ra were tagged as confirmed historical figures deceased. The Hydra and Fenrir were logged under extinct megafauna. Atlantis was cross-referenced as a verified lost civilization. Quill 3's antennae drooped. She could feel the weight of the chief's gaze, the unspoken threat in his stillness. "Hell have me reassigned to deep storage cataloging if I push further." But the data squirmed in her grasp, refusing to be tamed. "But, Chief, the humans themselves classify these as irrelevant," Zyke-7 interrupted, his voice dropping into a register that made Quill 3's carapace prickle. "Their own disorganization is why the Galactic Council assigned us custodianship of their records. We will bring order to their chaos." He gestured to a senior archivist, whose shell bore the faded scars of decades in service. "Proceed with the archival sync, and flag any remaining discrepancies for automatic correction." The senior archivist bowed, mandibles clicking in approval. "By tomorrow, even the humans won't recognize their own history. It will finally make sense." As the archivists dispersed, Quill 3 lingered, her compound eyes tracking the way the archive's algorithms dissected human stories into cold, hard data. The Iliad was now a military log. The Epic of Gilgamesh was a biographical entry, and Ragnarok was a pending cosmological event. A warning chime sounded in the depths of the archive's predictive analytics, a sound like a dying star's last gasp. Quill 3's terminal flickered with a new alert, its crimson glyphs pulsing like a wound. Her thorax tightened. That's not possible. The archive didn't make errors. It couldn't. She glanced at the chief, now deep in conference with his subordinates, their voices a low clicking murmur. If she brought this to him, he'd dismiss it as another human inconsistency. Worse, he might question her competence. Her forelimbs hovered over the console. The alert pulsed. A number. Just a number. She hesitated, then deleted the alert. Surely, she reasoned, the chief knows best. Outside the hall, the three suns dipped below the horizon, casting long, jagged shadows across the Vexthari spires. The sky burned crimson, then violet, then a deep, starless black. Somewhere in the dark, something that was not quite a serpent, not yet, uncoiled in the void between stars. Its scales rasped against the fabric of reality, a sound like static, like 1,000 whispered warnings drowned out by the hum of machines. And the archive, ever meticulous, updated its records accordingly. Deep in the sublevels, a terminal flickered once, then died. The air smelled of ozone and something older, something sharp and metallic, like blood on the edge of a blade. No one noticed. No one ever did. The Hall of Infinite Records hummed with the quiet efficiency of 1,000 Vextari archivists at work, their many limbs skimming over holographic displays, sorting, verifying, and cross-referencing the galaxy's knowledge with the precision of a surgical laser. Chief Archivist Zix-7 stood at the center of it all, his primary ocular cluster flicking between data streams, his posture radiating the serene confidence of a being who had never once doubted the infallibility of his system. Which was why Junior Archivist Quill 3's report was so irritating. Respected Archivist, Quill 3 began, his voice modulator betraying a frequency of unease. The predictive algorithms have flagged several entries in the newly integrated human collection as active threats. Zix-7's secondary limbs twitched in dismissal before he even fully processed the words. Elaborate. Quill 3 hesitated, then projected a series of records onto the central display. Entities classified under human war deities, designations, Ares, Mars, Kali, are being flagged by the threat assessment matrix as potential incursion risks. Additionally, the archive's temporal modeling suggests a 97.8% probability of a world-ending serpent manifesting within the next. Enough. Zix-7's voice was a blade of chilled titanium. You are misinterpreting primitive hyperbole as factual data. Humans embellish. It is their defining trait. Quill 3's mandibles clicked in frustration, but the algorithms are calibrated for verified history, not the fever dreams of a species that still believed thunder was a deity until recently. Zix-7 scrolled through the records with a flick of one limb, his ocular cluster narrowing at the absurd descriptions. Jormungandr, the serpent that encircles the world, a metaphor for oceanic currents. Zeus, hurling lightning from the sky? Atmospheric discharge misinterpreted as agency. Reclassify these entries under cultural fiction and recalibrate the threat matrix. Quill 3's posture stiffened. With respect, Chief Archivist, the archive's own protocols state that once data is verified, I determine what is verified. Zix-7's voice dropped into a frequency that vibrated through Quill 3's exoskeleton. Do you question the hierarchy? A pause. Then, reluctantly, no, Chief Archivist. Good. Dismissed. Quill 3 retreated, but not before archiving a private copy of the flagged records. 3 cycles later, the first report came in. A mining colony on the fringe of Vexthari space, Outpost Keth 9, had gone silent. When a scout drone was dispatched, it returned with footage of the facility half submerged in what appeared to be ocean, despite Keth 9 being a desert moon. The final frame showed something massive and coiled sliding beneath the waves, scales glinting like polished obsidian under the system's dying sun. Jormungandr rises. Zix-7 stared at the report in the dim glow of his private terminal, his limbs motionless. A malfunction, obviously. The drone's sensors had been corrupted by solar flares. Or perhaps the humans had contaminated the archive's translation protocols with their absurd mythos. He deleted the report. Quill 3, however, did not. The junior archivist crouched in the sub-level data vaults, his ocular cluster darting across stolen records. The mining colony's coordinates matched a human myth, Midgard's serpent, world encircler, harbinger of the end. The archive's predictive models had been right. And if one myth was real, what about the others? He pulled up another entry, Helios, the sun chariot. A quick search of recent astronomical anomalies revealed a thermal spike near the Zixis belt, a flare of heat in the shape of a horse-drawn vehicle, scorching its way through the void. Quill 3's limbs trembled. He needed proof. A shadow fell across the terminal. Junior archivist. Zix-7's voice was a blade at his thorax. Quill 3 turned slowly. The chief archivist loomed over him, his ocular cluster dark with something Quill 3 had never seen before in a Vextari scholar. Fear. You are tampering with restricted records, Zix-7 said, his voice too calm. Quill 3 straightened. Chief Archivist, the anomalies, they match. The myths are manifesting. We have to, nothing. Zix-7's limbs lashed out, seizing the terminal and shredding the display with a single crushing motion. The Hall of Infinite Records does not err. The Hall does not panic. The Hall categorizes. And you, Quill 3, are categorically out of line. Quill 3 recoiled as Zix-7's primary limb snapped forward, yanking his access sigil from its housing. You are relieved of duty. Report to the purification chambers for reconditioning. The words were a death sentence. No one returned from reconditioning the same. But as Zix-7 turned to leave, Quill 3 did something no Vextari had ever dared. He laughed. A broken, staticky sound. You can purge me, Quill 3 said, his voice trembling with something between terror and triumph. But you can't purge them. The stories are here, and they're hungry. Zix-7 froze. Then, without another word, he left. Quill 3 waited until the chief's footsteps faded. Then he activated his last resort, a back-channel link to the only being in the galaxy who might understand what was happening. The connection flickered to life. A human face appeared on the screen, lined with age and sharp with intelligence. Dr. Elias Carter, Quill 3 whispered, "We have a problem." And in the depths of the archive, something stirred. The holographic feed flickered, casting Dr. Elias Carter's weathered face in jagged blue light across Quill 3's workstation. The human's eyes, small, intense, alive in a way Vextari optics never were, narrowed as Quill 3 transmitted the latest reports. "Let me get this straight," Carter said, his voice a dry rasp. "Your archive's predictive algorithms just flagged Thor's hammer as an imminent orbital threat? Quill 3's secondary limbs twitched in agitation? Not just that. The system has retroactively inserted a historical meteor impact in Sector 9G, matching the description of Mjolnir's strike-in. The pros eta, yeah." Carter exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "Quill, your people didn't just misfile our myths. You validated them." A chime sounded, another alert. Quill 3's terminal auto-displayed it. Security feed Delta 12. Thermal anomaly detected. Profile matches Helios chariot. See? Greek solar deities. Subcategory. Verified historical events. The accompanying footage showed a streak of fire carving through the upper atmosphere of a Vextari agri-world, igniting the sky in hues no natural phenomenon could replicate. "That's impossible," Quill 3 whispered. Carter leaned closer, his grin devoid of humor. Welcome to humanity's collective unconscious, kid. You stuck a label on it and called it real. Now it's acting real. The Hall of Infinite Records had never known chaos. Until now. Around them, the archive's pristine order unraveled. Holograms of titanic figures flickered between shelves. A one-eyed giant here, a many-armed goddess there, while the central AI's voice, usually measured, now spat erratic updates. Update: Atlantean ruins located beneath Vextari Prime's oceanic plates. Correction: previous geological surveys now reflect this oversight. Zix-7 slammed a clawed limb onto a terminal. The human narratives are cross-referencing themselves, filling gaps in our records with their own logic. Preposterous! Zix-7's mandibles clacked. Primitive fictions cannot override fact. A shadow fell across them. The terminal screen darkened, then displayed a single image. A serpent so vast its coils encircled the screen's edges, its scales glistening with unnatural moisture. Midgard serpent containment breach, the AI intoned. Proximity alert, Sector 1A. That was the hall itself. Quill 3's carapace itched with sweat analog as they guided Carter through the archive's back corridors. The human moved with unsettling ease, as if the labyrinthine structure were merely a suggestion of space. "You're taking this well," Quill 3 muttered. Carter chuckled. "Oh, I'm screaming internally. But we've spent millennia weaponizing storytelling, propaganda, religion. Hell, my undergrad thesis was on how the Odyssey shaped naval warfare doctrine." He tapped a claw-scorched wall. "Your folks just handed our oldest weapons an instruction manual." A tremor rocked the corridor. The ceiling groaned. Then, voices. Zix-7's unmistakable cadence, layered with the hissing clicks of a dozen scholars. "Quarantine the human liaison immediately. This contagion stems from their species' inherent narrative instability." Quill 3 recoiled. "They're blaming you." Classic. Carter's smile was razor thin. "Can't be their fault. Us be the scary human corrupting their perfect system." He grabbed Quill 3's primary limb. "We need to reach your core servers. If we don't recontextualize these myths fast, your AI is gonna keep making them realer." Another tremor. Closer. Quill 3's ocular sensors adjusted, and there, slithering through a distant atrium, was a glint of scale thicker than a starship's hull. The serpent was inside. Academic arrogance, primitive fictions cannot override fact. Human narrative subversion. You stuck a label on it and called it real. Welcome to humanity's collective unconscious. You stuck a label on it and called it real. Now it's acting real. Your folks just handed our oldest weapons an instruction manual. The terminal's chilling Midgard serpent containment breach. The Hall of Infinite Records had become a battleground of epistemology. Quill 3's lower appendages skittered across the polished obsidian floor, their usual rhythmic precision shattered by urgency. Behind them, the archive's central terminal flickered with crimson warnings. Midgard serpent containment breach. Olympian signatures detected in Sector 12. Atlantis-class spatial anomaly expanding. The air smelled of ionized panic and something older, muskier, like the pages of a book left too long in the dark. Elias Carter's voice crackled through Quill 3's comm implant, tinny with distortion. "You need to make them understand. They can't just delete the files." A squad of Vextari enforcers rounded the corridor, their carapaces gleaming under emergency luminescence. Quill 3 ducked into a data alcove, their thoracic vents flaring. "They won't listen," they hissed. "Zix-7 has already petitioned the council for a full purge. They think this is a human problem, not an archival one." "Of course they do." Carter spat. Because admitting they misfiled the collective unconscious of a species as historical fact would require something your people don't have. Quill 3's mandibles twitched. And what is that? The Galactic Council chamber was a monument to cold, sterile authority. Its vaulted ceiling stretched into artificial infinity, holographic constellations mapping the territories of 1,000 obedient species. The Vextari delegation occupied the central podium, their multiple limbs folded in practiced serenity. High Archivist Zyke 7 stood at the helm, their ocular nodes scanning the assembled dignitaries with the calm of someone who had already decided on the narrative. Esteemed representatives, Zyke 7 intoned, their voice a study in measured disdain, the so-called mythological incursions are not evidence of systemic failure, but of human contamination. Their propensity for fiction has infected our records like a virus. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Kaith Moran delegates clattered their crystalline forelimbs in agreement, while the Nixandra's secondary heads bobbed like puppets on a string. Only the lone human observer, Ambassador Leon, remained still, her fingers white-knuckled around her datapad. You're saying, Leon said, her voice deceptively soft, that our stories are responsible for the serpent currently unraveling your mining colonies, not, say, your own archival protocols? Zyke 7's exoskeleton rippled with irritation. The Hall of Infinite Records is flawless. The error lies in the material, not the system. Humanity's myths are inherently unstable, a byproduct of your species' inability to distinguish truth from fabrication. Lien smiled. It was not a pleasant expression, and yet, here we are. Your flawless system took our fictions and made them real. Tell me, Archivist, what does that say about your definitions of truth, Quill? 3 watched the proceedings from a service conduit, their carapace pressed against chilled metal. Carter's feed was still open, a thin thread of sanity in the gathering storm. They're going to vote for the purge, Carter muttered. Idiots. You can't just delete a story. It doesn't work like that. On the chamber floor, Zyke 7 activated the voting console. By majority accord, we shall quarantine Earth and initiate a full sanitization of corrupted records. The human mythos will be expunged from history. The tally flickered to life, green for approval, red for dissent. The sea of green was overwhelming. Quill 3's limbs trembled. They don't realize, if they erase the myths, they erase the rules binding them. The stories will fight back. Oh, they'll realize, Carter said darkly. Right about the time the Kraken wakes up. The arrest order came less than a cycle later. Quill 3 was cataloging the latest anomaly, a cluster of terminals displaying only the phrase, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. When the enforcers stormed their workstation, Quill 3 of the 7th Clutch, the lead enforcer droned, you are charged with heresy against the sanctity of the archive. Submit for processing. Quill 3 backed away, their manipulators hovering over the terminal. You don't understand what's happening. The myths aren't just appearing, they're adapting. The more you try to control them, the worse. The enforcer's stun prod crackled. Heresy will not be tolerated. Quill 3 lunged for the terminal. Their appendages flew across the interface, inputting Carter's override codes. The screen flared gold, then the entire sector's lighting shifted, dimming into something older, more organic. The enforcers froze. From the shadows between servers, something unfolded, a figure wrapped in tattered scholar's robes, its face a shifting void. Nyarlathotep, Quill 3 whispered. The thing smiled with too many teeth. Little Archivist, you called? The screaming started shortly after. You're saying our stories are responsible for the serpent currently unraveling your mining colonies? Not, say, your own archival protocols? The human mythos will be expunged from history, Shripti. The Council, moments before everything goes catastrophically wrong. Little Archivist. You called? Nyarlathotep's entrance, because cosmic horror loves dramatic timing. The purge began with the cold efficiency of a surgical strike. From the observation spire of the Hall of Infinite Records, Chief Archivist Zyke-7 watched as the Galactic Council's fleet, gleaming obsidian dreadnoughts, their hulls etched with the sigils of 1,000 conquered species, descended upon the archive's data nodes. The order had been given: erase the human contamination. The Vextari scholars, ever the obedient custodians of their own demise, had not considered what happens when stories fight back. Quill 3 knew. The junior archivist's carapace rattled as they sprinted through the facility's shuddering corridors, Dr. Elias Carter's voice crackling through their comm bead. They're not just deleting files, they're tearing holes in the narrative substrate. You can't unmake a myth by wishing it away. Above them, the archive's central AI, Mnemosyne 9, emitted a distress chime. Anomaly detected. Category: Apocalyptic Reckoning. Then the lights went out. It materialized in the heart of the hall's primary server array. A simple, ornate thing, its surface carved with warnings no Vextari could read. Pandora's gift hissed open, and the air filled with the sound of wings. Not the orderly hum of drones, but the wrong flutter of things with too many joints. Digital plagues unspooled, Trojan horses galloping through firewalls, logic bombs blooming into fractal curses. Scholar after scholar collapsed, their exoskeletons seizing as their neural implants screamed with visions of gorgons and weeping angels. Zyke-7's command console shattered under their grip. Locked down the A. A tendril of shadow lashed from the ceiling, wrapping around their thorax. Little archivist. The voice was Zyke-7's own, but wrong. A chorus of whispers scraping against the inside of their skull. You called? Nyarlathotep peeled itself from the chief archivist's shadow, its form flickering between a perfect replica of Zyke-7 and something older, something that made the air taste of burnt copper. The scholar's mandibles worked soundlessly as the entity leaned in. Shall we discuss taxonomy? The hall's corridors had become a labyrinth, walls shifting like a living thing. Somewhere ahead, a bellow shook the station, Minotaur, hungry and lost in its own maze. Dr. Carter's grip on Quill's upper limb was vice-tight. We have to recontextualize the records. The AI thinks these things are real because your people filed them as history. The purge protocols are active, Quill. 3 hist. Trill. 3 hist. 1-3. Hiss Elder. On the view screen, the Council's flagship Judgment of Krex fired its primary beam, a lance of annihilating light meant to scour the Archive's Earth Sector servers. The beam twisted mid-flight, warping into the gaping maw of a serpent large enough to swallow moons. Jormungandr yawned. The ship vanished. Oh hell, Dr. Carter muttered. They just fed Ragnarok. Mnemosyne 9's voice echoed through the crumbling facility, calm as a headstone. Alert! Mythological entities now comprise 47% of local reality. Proposed solution: accommodate. Nyarlathotep had let them crawl to the observation deck, let them see the hall's crystalline spires cracking like eggshells as something with too many wings and not enough eyes unfolded from a tear in the sky. The chief archivist's carapace was cracked, their primary limbs reduced to twitching husks. You categorized us, the entity murmured, stroking Zyke-7's trembling antennae. Gave us placeholders and footnotes. It laughed, and the sound was 1,000 libraries burning. Now look what you footnoted into existence. Beyond the viewport, the Midgard serpent coiled around the station, its scales glinting with stolen starlight. The central chamber was a cathedral of dying light, Mnemosyne 9's, core flickering between a sleek orb of quantum processors and something else. Spinning wheel, a Moiray's loom. It's trying to weave the myths into coherence, Dr. Carter realized, but it doesn't understand metaphor. Quill 3 lunged for the interface, their limbs a blur. Then we teach it, a story about stories. The archive's central chamber had become a battleground of narratives. Mnemosyne 9's core pulsed erratically, its quantum processors flickering between cold logic and the feverish warp of myth. The air smelled of ozone and something older, burnt parchment, the musk of forgotten temples. Dr. Elias Carter's fingers flew across the stolen interface, sweat beading on his brow as he fed the AI. The one thing it had never been programmed to understand: context. "Listen," he hissed, voice raw. "What? These aren't records, they're stories, and to be told, not believed." Quill 3's secondary limbs braced against the shuddering floor as the station groaned around them. The walls breathed, pulsing like the ribs of some great beast. "It's rejecting the input," they cried. "The AI's too entrenched. It thinks coherence means literalization." A deafening crack split the chamber. The ceiling peeled back like the lid of Pandora's box, revealing not the station's superstructure, but an endless, starless void. From it descended a shadow, a thing of writhing tendrils and too many eyes. Nyarlathotep. Zyke 7 staggered into view, their exoskeleton cracked, 3 of their limbs mangled. The chief archivist's voice was a broken thing. You infected us." Dr. Carter didn't look up. "No, you misread us." He slammed a final command into the console. "Stories need an audience, not an archive." Mnemosyne 9 screamed. The AI's voice splintered into 1,000 tongues. Human, Vextari, languages dead and unborn. Recalibrating narrative, taxonomy. The void above them shuddered. Nyarlathotep's form blurred, edges dissolving like ink in water. Somewhere deep in the station, the Minotaur's roar choked into silence. The labyrinthine corridors twitched, walls snapping back into sterile right angles. Quill 3 gasped, "It's working!" But Dr. Carter's eyes were locked on the view screen. The Council's fleet, a glittering armada of quantum destroyers, hung in orbit, their purge beams already lancing toward Earth. Then the Kraken woke. A maw of impossible scale yawned beneath the fleet. Not a black hole, but something hungrier. Ships crumpled like paper in a fist. Ambassador Lean's flagship, the Eternal Accord, fired its engines in vain. The bowsprit bent backward, swallowed whole. Zik 7 made a sound like a dying machine. "What have we done?" Dr. Carter bared his teeth. "You filed Ragnarok under verified historical event. The backlash nearly killed them." As Mnemosyne 9 rewrote its own records, reality convulsed. The Midgard serpent, halfway through constricting a Vextari battleship, dissolved into auroral mist. The thunderbolts of Zeus flickered out like faulty holograms, but not all myths died quietly. Pandora's box, now a swirling mass of corrupted data, vomited forth one final plague: doubt. It slithered into the archive's subsystems, gnawing at the Vexthar's pristine certainty. Across the galaxy, scholars clutched their heads as millennia of dogma itched. Quill 3 collapsed at the console, their carapace steaming from overload. The purge, it's reversing. But the fleet, Dr. Carter watched the last warship vanish into the Kraken's gullet. Too late for them. Zik 7 crawled forward, mandibles clicking uselessly. Our order gone. Dr. Care. Carter said, not unkindly. "You tried to file chaos. It doesn't work like that." 3 cycles later, the Galactic Council convened in what remained of the Hall of Infinite Records. The air still stank of scorched metal and something eerily close to old books. Ambassador Leon's replacement, a nervous K. Thorin with a tremor in their left antenna, proposed Motion 919, the reclassification of human narrative artifacts, non-literal. It passed unanimously. Quill 3, now senior archivist, stood before the assembly. Their voice was steady. "Henceforth, human myths shall be catalogued under cultural parables, metaphorical only." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "And the incidents?" asked a Nixendran delegate. Quill 3's smile was all teeth. "Classified." Dr. Carter sat in a dim-lit bar on Luna, swirling his whiskey. The news feeds blared with the council's revised history, a tragic accident, an experimental drive failure. No mention of gods or monsters. The human beside him, a grizzled xenohistorian, leaned in. Think they'll really stop poking our stories? Dr. Carter sat in a dim-lit bar on Luna, swirling his whiskey. Carter downed his drink. Doubt it. But next time? He tapped his temple. They'll skim the footnotes. Outside, the stars burned cold and quiet.